Oh, really funny. So I have,
Quiet man.
so my,
That was a good one.
yeah. I've heard about it. Every now and then, it might feel like-
Yes.
Welcome to the Cicero Town Hall for the Wednesday, November 10th, 2021 regular Cicero Town Board meeting. Please note the exits in the room. We have one right here and one right there in the center, right behind Sergeant Snell. So right there in the back of the building. In addition to the town board members, we have with us this evening Neil Germain, Chris Woznicka, Steve Eterno, Teresa Roth, Elka Johans, Wayne Freeman, Gretchen Walter, Tracy Councilman, Councilor-elect Marizio, and Supervisor-elect Aragano. Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Boyke. Here. Counselor Carr.
Here.
Counselor White.
Here.
Counselor Bacallo.
Here.
Supervisor Meyer.
Here. Please, if you have served in the United States Marine Corps, please raise your hand. Sergeant Snell, up front here, Mr. Forkhammer. The reason I'm bringing that up this evening is today, November 10th, as every good Marine knows, is the birthday of the United States Marine Corps. Started November 10th, 1775, and here we are, November 10th. Marine Corps was started at the Second Continental Congress, so Marine Corps has been doing an outstanding job for a long time. This evening to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance is Richard Forkhammer from North Syracuse. After he served his country in the United States Marine Corps, he then became an accredited veteran service officer, which means he has served thousands of local veterans and their families in this community. So Richard, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have a graduation, Chief.
So, your program? You know.
Now. All right. So for everyone who doesn't know me, most everybody here, peers that I know, I've seen. My name's Sergeant Jim Snell from the town of Cicero Police. Where I've worked since 2007. We're here today, not only for the town board meeting, but we have a Citizens Police Academy that we've been having for the last 7 years. This is the 6th class, 7 years because we had to skip a year due to COVID. This is the 6th class that we have had. I'm proud to announce we've had more than 100 participants. So we've had 105 participants, members of the community that have gone through the program since it started. They did 10 weeks. The program was 14 weeks. We shortened it to 10 weeks to really make it a little bit easier for people. But they did topics about what law enforcement is about, vehicle and traffic law, New York State penal law, 911 center, state police canine unit and drug unit came in. They did use of force, defensive tactics. They spoke about that. They learned last night about de-escalation and the different things that are affecting us today. Without the chief's support, we couldn't do this program. We wouldn't have the resources available and have such a good community program like this that is we have 100% backing on. And we appreciate it. I appreciate everyone that has taken the time out of their busy schedule to sit for the last 10 weeks and been part of the program. This class, I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the smaller size, but it seemed like it was most teamwork in the best class because everybody was kind of like one unit. And everyone, not to say people don't get along, but everyone got along extremely well. Everyone participated. It was truly a pleasure to have everybody in class this year. And I was very, very thankful. So what we're going to do is we're going to read off the names, have them come up one by one and line up here. And then after everyone's name's been called up, we'll take a picture and then first. They're not in any particular order. Taylor Griffin. Sarah Hill. Kathy McNulty. I don't want to butcher it. I can never say it right. It's an easy name. Jamie Boak. 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 Yeah, that's it. Mary Mullane. This is the hardest one to spell, but the easiest to say. Diane Wisniewski. Danielle Southwick. The one and only Thomas Slater. He's a standout. Steve Preparian. Heather Claridad.
Come on, slide it in. Voice in the middle.
Angle.
On behalf of Class 6 of the Cicero Citizens Police Academy, we'd like to present this award to you. And thank you so much for supporting the community in this way. We really have learned a lot and value all of the things that we've learned and been able to even form our own mini community out of what's come out of this. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It's just an honor that the town of Cicero and the police department can provide a program like this. Sergeant Snell does an amazing job and building teamwork, and now you're part of the Cicero police family, so congratulations.
Congratulations. Where are they going?
They have a dinner.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Okay, next item on the agenda, Nancy.
Approval of abstracts. Resolve, the Cicero Town Board approves abstract number 44 dated November 3rd, 2021.
Second.
Discussion on number 3. Clerk will call the roll.
Counselor Boyke,
Yes.
Counselor Carr.
Yes.
Counselor White.
Yes.
Counselor Bacallo.
Aye.
Supervisor Meyer.
Yes, item is adopted. Thank you. Nancy?
Budget modifications. Resolve, the budget modifications are approved as presented.
Second.
Discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Counselor Boyke,
Yes.
Counselor Carr.
Yes.
Counselor White.
Yes.
Counselor Bacallo.
Aye.
Supervisor Meyer.
Yes, item is adopted. Thank you. Next item, clerk will please note the time. This is a continuation of a public hearing. The clerk previously provided documentation of proper posting. Continuation of public hearing, planning board residency, whereas a town law requires Cicero planning board members to be electors of the town in which they reside on the planning board, and whereas the town board wishes to determine if there is cause to remove a planning board member due to an alleged lack or failure to meet the qualifications to sit on the planning board. Now therefore be resolved, the public hearing is hereby called, commencing at approximately 6:30 PM local time on November 10th, 2021, to consider whether or not there is cause for a formal removal of a planning board member pursuant to section 271 of New York State Town Law. At the public hearing, all interested members will be given the opportunity to be heard. Okay, so this was brought up at the last board meeting and was then rescheduled for this evening. Any board members have any comments on this item?
Sure, I'd like to just give some background.
Sure,
Um,
Mr. Carp.
So first of all, this is a public hearing, but pursuant to controlling case law. Court reporter.
He's recording.
Pursuant to a controlling case law, this public hearing is of administrative nature. It is not a legislative public hearing, and accordingly, there will be no public comment. The purpose of this public hearing is to determine if there is cause to remove a member of the planning board for loss of eligibility. Some background, there was a citizen complaint filed alleging that a planning board member, Joseph Rizzuto, I hope I'm pronouncing that, or Rizzuto, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, had moved out of the town. As a result of that complaint being made, the board does have an obligation to investigate it. The town of Cicero, as a matter of policy, does not release the names of people who make complaints, whether it's about something like this, code violations, or what have you. The original complainant, however, is not a member of this board. This issue was discussed at an executive session of the town board on August 11th. For the record, executive sessions are confidential. However, I'm advised by the town attorney that for the purposes of this public hearing, information like that can be made public. The planning board member in question was sent a letter asking him to appear at a public hearing, or sorry, correction, at an executive session at the town board meeting on August 25th. He sent a letter to the town board, to the town attorney, dated August 11th, which I will address in a moment. The planning board member in question did not attend the public or the town board meeting or executive session on August 25th. He was sent a follow-up letter asking him to appear and talk to the town board about this issue at executive session on September 8th. He sent a letter saying that he was not interested in, more or less, in attending the executive session, but would rather discuss the issue in public. Subsequently, he indicated that he would not be coming and no action was taken at that meeting. The letter of August 11th sent by the planning board member was not shared with the board at the time it was sent because it was addressed to planning board chairman Mark Marzullo, planning board attorney Neil Germain, and town attorney Robert Germain. It was later shared with the board. I believe that frankly it raised more questions than it answered. These letters will all be made part of the record at the conclusion of this public hearing. The board does have a legal obligation to investigate this issue. This public hearing, at least, I do not believe that we should conclude this public hearing tonight. What I would like to do is make an inquiry of the planning board member in question, the inquiry that we intended to make at the executive sessions of August 25th and September 8th, and then adjourn for possible further proceedings depending upon what information is gleaned from the inquiry tonight. It may have been possible to avoid the necessity of this public hearing, had we had the opportunity to make an inquiry sooner. However, we did not. Any other members want to comment or anything?
Counselor, procedurally, are we on the right track on this? Okay, thank you. Any other board members?
Can I comment later?
I'm sorry,
Is it all right if I comment later during this session?
you're always willing to speak.
Thank you. I'll wait.
Okay. Are there any other board members who wish to address this issue?
I think Mr. Carp laid it out very well. We did try to speak to him prior to doing this because none of us wanted to do it this way. Nobody wanted to bring anybody's personal life out into public. But I do think Mr. Carp explained it all very well.
Thank you.
Jonathan, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, you were proposing not taking action on this evening.
Yes, I'd like to ask, and certainly provide, obviously, the rest of the board members have an opportunity to ask any questions that they might have relevant to this, and then adjourn to a date certain for possible future proceedings. I mean, the board could confer following this either in executive session or via email or telephone in such a manner that did not violate the open meetings law to determine whether or not the board felt there was cause to proceed with a formal removal or whether or not the board's satisfied with the answers that it gets tonight. As long as the rest of the board's okay proceeding in that manner, of
All right,
course.
Counselor Jermaine, the next meeting, I believe, is the 8th of December. What would be a proper resolution to pass this evening to have the,
You would just not take any action. Pass it over to.
what would be the proper resolution or action by the board this evening to do that?
Hold it in advance. Every next one you would, and you would say.
Okay, so I'm going to move to keep this public hearing open and to have it at a future date of December. Okay. thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so what's the next step in this action here this evening?
I would like to ask Mr. Rizzuto some questions. He is not obligated to answer them, of course. I personally would take an adverse inference if he did not answer the questions, but the rest of the board obviously is free to do whatever they wish with the information that we gleaned tonight. But I would leave that to Mr. Rizzuto as to whether or not he wants to answer any questions. I think that's probably the best place. If you want to take the microphone and sit down, that's fine as well.
Sir, please make sure you have your name and address for the record.
Joseph Rosito, 6293 Muskrat Bay Road, Brewerton, New York, 13029.
Okay. Rosito. Okay, so I've been pronouncing it incorrectly. Okay. So in your communication with the town attorney on this subject, you refer to 6293 Muskrat Bay Road, which you just gave as your residence, as your prime residence. By that you mean primary residence, correct?
I will answer that. That's my domicile.
Okay. All right. But I'm specifically referring to communications that you directed to the town attorney about this subject. You referred to it as your prime residence. That was the word, those are the words you used.
I guess, yeah.
Okay, so, okay, you mean domicile primary residence.
Mhm.
Okay. Do you currently reside there? By which I mean, do you spend the majority of nights there? Do you spend the majority of your time when you're not working or engaging in activities away from home there?
According to the law and the people that I've talked to, 3 different attorneys, that is my domicile. That is my answer.
No, that's not the question that I'm asking you, though, sir.
Well, that is my answer.
Okay.
Okay.
So you're telling me that you are giving, that is not responsive to the question I'm asking. I'm asking you, where do you spend the majority of your time when you are not at work or engaging in other activities, when you are not at home? Where do you lay your head most nights when you go to sleep?
I don't think that's a relative question.
I think it is a relevant question to this. This is very fact specific.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
And let me just refer to a couple comments you made earlier. I was sent a letter asking to come to executive session.
Mhm.
Okay. If somebody wants to pull the letter up, there is nothing in that letter whatsoever that stated what the agenda was. None. Maybe they want to know the color of my vehicle or the shingles on my roof. None whatsoever. So I had no intention of going to that. And my understanding was to go into executive session the way you did it was not legal. So I didn't refuse. Then I was accused of refusing to go, and all these other things came out. I sent a letter to the best of my ability. I'm not an attorney. You are an attorney, correct?
I am.
Still practicing.
I am.
Okay. So I had to refer to other counsel to find out what the proper things were to do.
Okay.
So I sent a letter to the attorney, hoping that it would go to the board members. And apparently it didn't.
It did not at first, no, because it wasn't addressed to us.
Well, I didn't know
Yeah.
proper procedure. I
Okay.
sent it to the attorney. I figure he's the one who advises you all, so he would pass it on.
All right. You said the initial letter of the 11th, or the initial letter sent by the town attorney did not specify the reason that you were being invited. Did you have any reason from conversations with any third parties to know what the reason you were being invited was?
There were so many rumors flying around. The police came to my house looking for me, disrupted my family, put it out there that I was going through a divorce, which I tried to keep secret, which this town has put wide open, put my family in a lot of embarrassment. Neighbors wanted to know why there were troopers. They knew we were going through, some of them, going through divorce. They thought we had a blowout and I was going to get arrested. It was not a pleasant time for me.
Okay, but I'm asking you, did you have any reason to believe from conversations with any third parties as to what the reason for the invitation was?
I had some ideas.
Okay. And did you at any time reach out to Mr. Germain, who sent you the letter, asking you, or asking him what the reason of the invitation was?
See, I spoke to two different attorneys from the town board. Don't remember exactly what I said to each one. I did talk to Neil, and believe I was told, not knowing what the difference between domicile, residence, and all that, that I had two choices. I either had to move back into the town of Cicero, which wasn't even a thought process, or I had to resign from the board.
Right.
That was bad information, which I will get to later on. That was not, I won't say bad, it was incorrect. Then I also spoke to Robert Germain. I called him and asked him some questions, and he said he really couldn't talk to me, conflict of interest. So we didn't go too far there, but I have about a 20 some odd minute conversation with him via my phone.
Okay. Right. But what I'm asking you is, you said that you had no idea what you're being invited for, although you also had you said you had an idea from talking to third parties. My question was, did you call Robert Germain and say, hey, I got this letter from you inviting me to come speak in an executive session. What's that about? And he said he couldn't tell you what it was about?
He didn't want to speak to me. He said it was a conflict of interest. But
Okay.
I will say, okay, in honesty, I had an idea what it was.
Okay.
But if you're going by the letter of law, you want me to do certain things, jump through certain hoops, then you should have spelled out correctly what you wanted.
Okay. And then after you did not come to that meeting for whatever reason, and you're right, you were not subpoenaed to attend, there was no legal obligation. It was an invitation, not a requirement. You were sent a follow-up letter by Mr. Germain, correct?
Yes.
And did that letter spell out the reason for you being invited?
I'm not 100% sure, but if you
Okay.
have the letter, I'd be more than happy to look at it, or you can.
Actually, I don't have his letters. I have
Okay.
your letters.
Right.
And he's not here. Okay. But at that point, did you have a better idea of what it was about at that point?
Yes,
Okay. And how did you have a better idea?
because there was so much talk about it around the town.
Okay.
It never, I wanted to ask you something there. Can I ask who initiated this investigation?
Well, no, as I said to you, the town does not release the names of complainants for
Maybe
any
not a
reason.
complaint, but that complaint went to someone here. Who initiated that complaint?
It's not really relevant.
It is to me. You disrupt my family. Someone in this board disrupted my family. I already know the answer. I'm waiting to hear.
Fine. Okay, a citizen raised the issue with me. I called the town attorney and asked if I had an obligation to report it. He said I did. I asked him how to satisfy that obligation, and he said I could report it to any number of possible sources, including law enforcement. I talked to the chief about it, and he took it from there.
In response to that, you said a couple of comments that if I had come to these meetings, we could have possibly avoided where we are today. One simple phone call from you or any member of this board to Mr. Marzullo or myself could have also done the same thing.
Well, calling you would not have satisfied my legal obligation.
You would have got the ball rolling. You would have got the answers you wanted. You would have. okay?
Perhaps.
And I was willing at one point, before I knew what was going on, I called Mr. Marzullo and I said to him, if I have embarrassed this board in any way, shape, or form, or you specifically, Mr. Marzullo, I would resign. All you have to do is ask me.
Okay.
So
Well, moving on. Okay, so you are not you will refuse to answer questions about where you spend the majority of your time when you're not at home, correct? Your only answer is that your domicile is 6293 Muskrat Bay Road?
Correct.
Okay. So at any time in the past 18 months, let's say 24 months, have you spent the majority of your time when you're not at home any place other than 6293 Muskrat Bay Road?
Many places.
Any place you spent the majority of the time, let's say for more than a month?
I have many friends, most of which are in the town of Cicero, and I don't think that's relevant.
Well, I'm asking you some questions. You can either answer them or not answer them, and then the board can make a determination as how to take your responsiveness or non-responsiveness. At any time in the last 24 months, have you changed the address on your driver's license?
Yes,
How many times?
once.
Once. And what did you change it to?
Well, I'll let you find that out because you found out where I live. So
No, I'm asking you a question, sir. What you changed it once in the last 24 months? In the last 36 months, how many times have you changed the address on your driver's license?
twice.
Twice. And what were those two addresses?
I'm not sure if I have to answer that. I don't have counsel here.
You don't have to answer any question. I'm asking you, and you can determine whether or not you want to.
Okay.
Okay, so are you saying you are not going to answer that question?
I'm saying I don't have legal representation to decide how to answer that.
Okay, so you're not answering it tonight.
You found where I live or where I was staying at certain times. I figured you're going to do some digging. You already know the answer to some of these questions, but continue.
Well, look, it's very clear that you're not going to answer the majority of questions I'm going to ask.
Keep going.
No, I'm not going to waste everybody's time, sir. So you've made it clear that you're interested in answering the questions you want to answer. You're going to give non-responsive answers. There's really no point in belaboring it. I will make the inference that I think is appropriate. The rest of the board will make a determination from there. I don't want to waste your time or anybody else's time if you're not going to cooperate. So thank you very much for attending.
So my comments are this. I sent this information to one of the two attorneys. This is from the Association of Towns, who is like the governing body over this. And I thought this would end everything. Okay, long paragraphs, but at the bottom, it talks about domicile, residence, all that other thing. But and I'll give you a copy if you want it. It says, a temporary residence is a temporary purpose with intent to return to the old home when that purpose has been accomplished. Leaves the domicile unchanged. 1985 Ops Attorney General, 1 LNF 143, 1985. Examples. A common scenario is if a town official is going through a divorce or home renovation and temporarily moves into the neighboring town, this would be insufficient to change their domicile because they have no intention of staying there. A change in domicile is really a question of fact that depends on the circumstances of each use. Ultimately, only a court can determine domicile. See Hosley versus Curry, 85, and it goes on and on. If the town board believes an officer who should be a resident is no longer one, they can commence a declaratory judgment action, in which case the court will decide if the facts are there to constitute a change in domicile. So I thought that would answer all your questions.
Sure.
Okay.
So I'd like to respond to that briefly, and I understand why you might have thought that. The problem is, if you've done some research on this, and I don't know if you have, you're relying on research others have done, all of these cases are very fact specific. So the reason why we invited you twice was because we wanted to talk to you to try to have an idea of the facts. Simply saying, okay, he's going through a divorce, that ends it, does not necessarily satisfy our obligation. That was the reason why we wanted to have a conversation like this. Still trying to have one tonight. However, you're not really being very cooperative in terms of answering it, which, hey, you don't have to cooperate. You don't have to answer it. You're not being compelled. Well, I disagree, but that's fine. No, that's fine. You're not. And you don't have one here. But that's it. It's very fact specific. We have a legal obligation. So that's the reason why simply sending that opinion, I've done a lot of research. I've read a lot of those things. I've seen the same stuff you've seen, probably more. Doesn't really necessarily answer it until we have some more facts to fill in. Because again, these are very fact specific. Every case is different. So I see where you're coming from and why you thought that, but we knew that, and that's why we wanted to have a conversation.
So that was that. So that's not good enough. So here's a letter from District Attorney William Fitzpatrick. I met with him, not personally, I met with his senior advisor. Dear Mr. Rosito and Ms. Boyke, I'm writing to advise you the outcome of an investigation in which you were both involved. By way of background, in July of 2021, the New York State Police received a complaint alleging that Mr. Rosito had a position on the town board in violation of section 23(1), which required him to be an elector of the town. Specifically, it was reported that Mr. Rosito was living in Madison County and should not have been able to serve as a Town of Cicero Planning Board member while living outside the town boundaries. This office worked in conjunction with New York State Police and reached the following factual and legal conclusion. Through our investigation and by Mr. Rosito's own admission, we have established that Mr. Rosito currently resides at 1519 Bushnell Shore Road, Madison County. He previously resided at 6293 Muskrat Bay Road in the town of Cicero. Per the Onondaga County Department of Finance Office of Real Property Services, Mr. Rosito continues to own the property at 6293 Muskrat Bay Road. We have determined that Mr. Rosito moved to Madison County location because he and his wife are planning a divorce. His wife, Gina Rosito, continues to reside at 6293 Muskrat Bay Road. Mr. Rosito has continued his voter registration via his address, 6293 Muskrat Bay Road. New York State Town Law, Section 23(1), governs the eligibility of town officers and states the following. Every officer of the town at the time of his appointment and throughout his term of office, shall be an elector of the town. While elector is not defined in town law, it has been constructed to mean a person who could register as a voter, which in turn requires that person to be a resident of the jurisdiction, section EG 1985, New York, OP, Attorney General, INF 143, New York, NYAG. The election law defines residence in section 1-104, parentheses 22, as the place where a person maintains a fixed, permanent, and principal home, and to which he, wherever temporarily located, always intends to return. Crucial determination whether a particular resident complies with the requirements of the election law is that the individual must manifest an intent coupled with physical presence without any aura or of shame. Shame. People versus O'Hara 96, New York 2D 378 2001, citing matter of Gallagher 41 AD 2D 946. The Court of Appeals further held that the person with more than one residence may choose one to which he has legitimate, significant, and continuing attachments as his address for purpose of the election law. Matter of Ferguson versus McNabb, 60, New York, 2D 598, 1983. Courts which have considered this issue tend to give wide latitude as to how much physical presence is actually required in order to establish a residence. Section EG Gladwin versus Power 21 AD 2D 665. Court upheld candidate's residence where she returned for a rented space within the district which she used as an office and for occasional living. Matter of Bressler versus Holt Harris 37 AD 2D 898. Candidate's residence upheld where he rented an apartment, kept a few personal items at the location, and slept at the apartment one time in 7 years. Gallagher versus Dinkins 41 AD 2D 946, Second Department 1973. Residence upheld where candidate ran for office from his family home even after having married and moved to a different residence with his wife. Here it seems clear Mr. Rosito maintains a legitimate, significant, continuing attachment to the address at Muskrat Bay Road. Specifically, Mr. Rosito still owns the property and his wife still lives in the home, while his intent to return to the property may depend on the outcome of the divorce. At this time, the divorce has not been finalized, and his intent to return cannot be said to be misplaced or unreasonable. Accordingly, we found that Mr. Rosito did not commit any criminal offense related to this dual residence, and we have closed the investigation without arrest. Sincerely, Melanie Spooches Carden, Senior Assistant District Attorney.
I mean, sure, and you can keep reading things like that. The bottom line is the board has an obligation to investigate. We've attempted to talk to you about this so we could fill in some blanks, and we had a couple opportunities, and here we are tonight. I'm not disputing any of most of what you read is precedent and things that I've read. I don't think any of us are disputing that. We had an obligation to follow through on this. We tried a couple times and you didn't come for whatever reason, even though you sort of knew at least the first time and definitely knew the second time what we were looking for. And now we're here tonight to follow up on it. So, I understand what you're saying, but that's why we're here. We have an obligation to follow through on it.
Mr. Carp,
Sure.
I thought we were on one big team here. And you know what? All you had to do was make one phone call. This could have been avoided. You could have, out of courtesy to Mark Marzullo, our chairman, myself, Mr. Meyer didn't even know about this. How could the supervisor not know about this? It's just amazing. And I heard so many rumors and I was so embarrassed. Now it's like everything's out in the open, pretty much. It's probably, it couldn't have made my situation any worse. It really has caused me a lot of pain and suffering. And I personally feel that you were responsible and you could have minimized this by one simple phone call. And I'm very, very unhappy with that. And I'm unhappy that the board didn't reach out to someone else other than Judy Boyke. Someone could have come to me and asked me, honestly, not this, to me, it's like a witch hunt for something so insignificant. I was so worried when my wife called me and said the police were looking for me, and she went nuts because she thought something happened to our kids, then something happened to me. It was not a fun ride. And I'm very unhappy the way this all came out.
Well, I understand that. It's, unfortunate that it didn't conclude sooner. If you would have taken us up on our invitation to come
If you'd
speak
have been a
to
little
us.
bit more professional, we wouldn't be here tonight. And I feel that you couldn't have been less professional. And I expected more from a counselor and from an attorney. I had to go through a lot of hoops to find out what was right, what was wrong. I really thought that I did something wrong. I moved out of my place that I was staying with my wife because of medical reasons. My lawyer and my doctor said, Joe, you need to go somewhere temporarily, do something, because this is going to drive you crazy. And I'm like, what do I do? And then a lot of things happen, but I'll tell you, I'm very unhappy the way this is unfolded.
Okay.
All I have to say.
You said, John?
Yeah, I don't have
Any
anything
board
else.
members?
Yeah.
Comments?
I guess I would like to speak because obviously I've done a lot of research myself. I made a trip to see Bill Fitzpatrick myself personally. And because of this horrible thing that's been created for a human being over something that I guess to me would have been a simple phone call as well. First of all, I would like to talk about the first letter, which I have. And it was an invitation. There was not a thing in there. And matter of fact, this was created during a session that I did not agree to. It was agreed to by evidently a few. There were no notes taken in it. It said nothing. It invited him. The second letter accused him of refusing to come. I do believe that we received a phone call that night because Mr. Rosito was ill. And Mr. Robert Jermaine came to each one of us individually and said that he was unable to attend because he had been to the doctors, he had had treatment, and he was sick. I have contacted the Association of Towns. I contacted them so many times. How many of you read your Association of Towns book, your Talk of the Town? If any one of you had read it, you would see right in the middle, they address mind you. Planning Board and Zoning Board of Appeals removal of, it's right here in the middle. I spent a lot of time with these people and they said that there was a situation here where they really had not had a lot of information on it, so they dug into it. I spoke with them several times. In it, it says, for cause after, and cause means that there has to be just legal cause to remove, or as opposed to discretion. Town board should be able to point to an object reason for removal, such as failure to meet minimum yearly training requirements set forth by the town. It goes on to say, but it states in there about domicile. Domicile is a big thing, and Mr. Fitzpatrick brought that up to me and was very, very adamant about it. Where you live, where you vote, where your prime resident is, has nothing to do where you sleep. That is a known fact. And as long as you have a resident in the town and you, as a matter of fact, vote, which happened this year, that is your prime residence. It is your intent to return. This is a witch hunt. To have a state trooper sent to a house, your home, on a Friday afternoon at 1 o'clock and ask the woman who answers the phone, is your ex-husband home? I mean, I have spoke with Gina because yes, she is a neighbor. I knew nothing of this divorce going on, and I was even accused of it because I'm a neighbor. That's ridiculous. This was private to those two people. Mr. Rosito also obviously has some health issues, which this has created an enormous burden on him. That is why I took it upon myself to find out what the procedure for this is, to have every opportunity to understand it. And I myself will say, as I sit here now, that there is absolutely no reason for this to go any further. That's all I have to say.
I'd just like to respond briefly. When it comes to domicile, it does have something to do with where you sleep. You cannot, for example, sleep every night in Massachusetts, but vote in New York and say, yeah, New York's my domicile. It's fact specific, which is the reason why we needed to ask these questions. We're not here to vote. This whole public hearing was not a public hearing on removal. It was a public hearing to determine if there was cause to remove, which was the purpose of the questions that I wanted to ask tonight and that we wanted to ask a couple times. So, you know, we've got some answers and we can determine where we're going to go from there. But, you know, to argue about what the cause is or what the cause should be is we're not there at this point. Is to determine if there was cause, which we're not going to determine tonight anyway. So I have
Well,
nothing more
if
to
there
say.
is a cause, then we will go to a administrative hearing.
That's what this is.
No, it is not. It is not. Administrative hearing has a judge. This is not an administrative hearing.
It is an administrative hearing, Mr. Jermaine, isn't it?
It was not published that way. It was published as a public hearing.
Which is what the statute says, and there's controlling case law on this. on the
And it's
subject.
also that's why I went to Bill Fitzpatrick.
That's a criminal matter. That has nothing to do.
No, it's not a criminal matter. It was a civil matter. And
Right.
that's why Miss Cardin, who was the one that was assigned to the investigation that you prompted to send the state police to Joe's house. She is the one that actually had the case. She's the one that sat with us. She called us. I went and sat with Joe.
Right. What I'm saying though is Bill Fitzpatrick has nothing to do with whether or not this is an administrative hearing or it complies with the statute regarding that is all I'm saying. That's
I think this is just ridiculous,
okay.
out of control, witch hunt. I just don't so what is the purpose of this? Why is it so important that we remove Joe?
We are here to determine whether or not there was cause based on information given to a town board member, and the town board has a legal obligation to look into it.
The cause was that he wasn't sleeping at home?
The
That
cause was there was,
obviously,
the cause was there was an allegation he was no longer living in the town of Cicero.
well, we
The-
proved he is.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
The board has an obligation to investigate it. which is
Yes,
what we're
and
doing.
I'm part of this board and I did my due diligence. The rest of you didn't even have the common courtesy to even talk to the man.
I'm not, we've run this point firmly into the ground. I'm
That's
not really
fine.
interested in any more posturing, so I have nothing more to say tonight.
Counselor White, Counselor McCullough, any further follow-up?
This could have been taken care of many months ago when it all started, if we could have just spoken to him. I am at every planning board meeting as the liaison, and he never spoke to me. Mr. Marzullo never came and spoke to me. And I'm not blaming anybody. All we wanted to do was ask. We just, the board needed to ask questions. You had plenty of opportunities to come and speak to me also. And I apologize for the aggravation, but again, if we had been able to talk to begin with, we wouldn't have gotten this far. I didn't accuse anybody of anything, sir.
You all set, Nancy?
I am, thank you,
Okay,
sir.
Michael? Counselor, I'm new at this type of a action, so I'm looking for your guidance. I think most of us here are new at this
Yes.
type of a agenda item, so I'm looking for your guidance on
Does it have to be to a date certain? All right,
What are we going to vote on? What are we voting on?
Well, see, the whole issue that is before you is whether there's cost.
And so don't we have to determine a cause before we,
Eventually, from way of return, yes, we believe there's cost to remove. No, we don't believe.
okay?
If it's a no, Neil, do we even need to act?
all right, so why don't we hold it open and then we can determine whether or not we're going to have any further proceedings.
okay, Counselor, you recommend it to a date certain or not with a date certain?
I would recommend that you hold it open without.
But what about this guy's livelihood? What fair, how fair is that?
Excuse me, what? I'm sorry, sir. Well, we're trying to determine the legal process here and we need to,
Board decision,
I'm sorry, say again, please.
board decision.
Yes, sir. That's why I'm asking you questions.
But it's the board decision whether or not. Whether or not you put down a whole.
Okay, so I'm going to open the discussion for the next action, whether you want to have it a date certain or not. Let's have that discussed first.
I would just prefer to hold it open.
Okay, any other comments on have it to hold it open without a date certain? Any discussion on that part?
John?
Why are we going to hold it open? How much more information do we need?
That was my question.
Well, because
Okay.
I think that the board should confer.
Okay, so,
With each other.
Yes. with
all right,
each other.
John, are you going to make a motion on this?
Yeah, I would move that we not take any action tonight and hold the hearing open, but with no date certain.
Okay, Counselor, does that require a vote of the board on that? Okay, so we have a motion, do we have a second? And Mr. Carp's motion.
I'd like to amend that to a date though, right?
Okay,
Well, no,
we're kind of going against his motion.
Sorry.
The motion was with no date certain. We're gonna vote on, if that motion is seconded, vote on that motion.
So
You wanna talk about a different motion?
that's a different
Yeah.
item. Okay, so we have a motion.
I would. So reasoning for, I would like to, either way, I'd like to end this, right? I mean, I feel like if we put a date to it.
Okay,
it's-
so-
That's fine. That's
Holding
fine.
it
I
up-
withdraw my
Holding it
motion.
open law, I don't
Okay,
feel
so,
it's
all
good
right,
for
let's,
anybody.
let's get
I
back.
withdraw my
All
motion.
right, so let's get back to the point, folks. We do not have a motion on the floor. Okay, so that being said, is the next step, Counselor, to close the public hearing?
Well,
Because
why
we
don't
have
you,
a
you
public
want to
hearing.
move
You're
to
gonna
hold
get
it
a
open?
different, you're gonna get a different motion.
Okay, we're gonna get a different
What
one,
would that date be?
December 8th.
December 8th.
Okay.
Second.
Counselor, all right, let's, no. Are you making a motion, Mike? Or John?
Mike made the motion. I seconded it.
Okay, all right, please repeat the motion so the clerk has
The
it.
motion was hold it open till December 8th.
Okay. Are we set on that? That's the motion. Counselor Carper, you seconding that?
I do second it.
Okay, so discussion on the motion. No discussion. Okay, clerk will call the roll.
Counselor Whitey,
No,
Counselor Carr,
Yes.
Counselor White,
Yes.
Counselor McCullough,
Yes.
Supervisor Meyer.
No, item is adopted. Thank you. So we're moving on to the next item on the agenda.
But there was a public hearing.
What-
It's not a legislative hearing with public comment.
It was said it was a public
I know,
hearing,
but-
It's not that kind of public hearing, Mr.
That's why at the beginning, that's why it was addressed, Mr. Snyder. That's why I asked,
Then the whole thing cannot be in the record, Don
I-
Snyder. The couldn't be in the record because you in fact advertised it
yes,
as
I,
a public hearing. That's not
understand.
what we had.
I
So
understand
this
that.
whole thing is for naught. And
That's
we'll
not
do it
true.
again.
There's
Thank you.
multiple kinds of public hearings. There's
You know-
controlling case law on this, Mr. Snyder.
I really appreciate you being a lawyer, but I've lost a little faith in you in this whole situation because
Mr. Snyder.
one phone call.
This is completely
doesn't mean
inappropriate,
anything.
Mr. Snyder.
Thank you.
I know it's very.
Mr.
inappropriate.
Snyder, Mr. Carp, would you like to please, Counselor, just for the education of everyone here, talk about the item
there
in
there are
the,
many forms of public hearings. And this one would not be one that was, what you're talking about is the typical public hearing that we have. And the public is invited to speak and give comment. This is not that type of hearing. This is more of an administrative process, a fact finding. Not include a public, you know, unbridled opportunity for the public to speak.
okay, so we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda. Thank you. Okay, number 6, calling for a public hearing to opt out of legalized marijuana sales in Cicero. Whereas New York State Budget Bill enacted January 20th, 2021 contained provisions related to the legalization of sales and the regulation and taxation of cannabis products in New York. And whereas New York State Legislature enacted New York State Cannabis Regulation and Taxation Act, also cited as New York Cannabis Law, which was signed into law on March 31st, 2021. And whereas Section 132 of the Cannabis Law, Municipal Control and Preemption provides towns may pass a local law subject to permissive referendum to opt out of allowing adult use cannabis retail, dispensary, and on-site consumption licenses within the municipal jurisdiction of the town of Cicero. Now therefore be resolved to call a public hearing on December 8th, 2021 to consider local law number 14 of 2021, calling for marijuana within the town of Cicero pursuant to the provisions of the New York State Cannabis Regulation and Taxation Act. Said local law, if passed, shall be subject to permissive referendum.
Second.
The clerk has notified me of proper posting, and the clerk is to note the time, please. Okay. In the traditional, I'm sorry.
we're just calling for a public hearing, correct?
Right, we're calling
Yeah,
for a public hearing.
Well, because it's not a public hearing, we're
Right.
setting.
No. Calling.
We're just setting the
Okay,
date.
so discussion on this item.
I mean, I'm going to vote for this. I'm not necessarily in favor of banning everything. I know that part of the thought is we can opt out now, then opt back in later, and maybe we have to do that, but I'd like to try to craft the appropriate legislation prior to that date. I just wanted to specifically say that my vote to hold the public hearing is not necessarily a vote for what we're specifically calling for here. That's all.
I'd like to concur with John on that. I think this is going to give the public an opportunity to participate and debate on this, as well as the town board members. It also gives the board the maximum flexibility, and that if the board decides to opt out, then you can make a different decision next year. So, and hopefully maybe we've learned something from some of the other municipalities that have done this or not done this. So that being said, further debate, discussion on number 6. Clerk will call the roll.
Counselor Whiting,
Yes.
Counselor Carr.
Yes.
Counselor White,
Yes.
Counselor Bacallo,
Aye.
Supervisor Myers.
Yes, item is adopted. Next item, Nancy.
The board approves the hiring of seasonal wingers. Whereas the highway department has a seasonal need this winter for winger positions. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board approves the attached list of wingers effective 11/10/2021 at a pay rate of $18 per hour. $18.50 effective January 1, 2022. Budget code DB 514212.
Second.
Discussion? Clerk will call the roll.
Counselor Whiting,
Yes.
Counselor Carr.
Yes.
Counselor White.
Yes.
Counselor Bacallo,
Aye.
Supervisor Myers.
Yes, item is adopted. Thank you.
Supervisor?
Yep.
May I say something? If any of you know anybody that wants to be a wing person, please have to give us a call. We are in need of people.
How short are you?
We have just enough.
How many do you normally have over just
We like
enough?
to have about 30 to 50.
How many do you have now? Oh, okay.
If you call me, I'm more than happy to do it. No
I
pay.
have an application already in my office for filling.
I
Thank you.
think it looks fun.
Okay,
It's not
number
fun.
8, appoint ZBA ad hoc member, whereas Cicero Town Board created an additional ad hoc member to the Town Cicero Zoning Board of Appeals. Now therefore be resolved, Cicero Town Board appoints James Duval to serve as an ad hoc member of the Cicero Zoning Board of Appeals effective November 10th, 2021 to December 31st, 2021.
Second,
Second. Discussion?
I think the whereas is incorrect. We created an additional planning board ad hoc. This ad hoc is open because there was a vacancy because someone stepped down, correct?
No.
We already
Oh,
had, yeah,
Gary Palladino retired or resigned,
right,
and then we replaced.
right. That's why. So I just wanted to correct the record. I don't know if you want
Okay.
to amend it,
Uh,
Mr. Supervisor, or you want.
Let the records show that it's an ad hoc member, not an additional. Would you like to second that corrected resolution?
I so second.
Okay, discussion on number 8. Clerk will call the roll.
Counselor Whiting,
Yes.
Counselor Carr.
Yes.
Counselor White.
Yes.
Counselor Bacallo,
Aye.
Supervisor Myers.
Yes, item is adopted. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is number 9, adoption of the 2022 Cicero, or Town Cicero budget, whereas after holding a public hearing and careful deliberation of the preliminary budget, now therefore be resolved, Cicero Town Board approves and adopts. And the and should be deleted, the 2022 Town Cicero budget, including special districts. Need a second for discussion.
Second.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. We've had a number of discussions and input on amendments to the budget. We have a nice worksheet put together by the comptroller. I think it's a good tool to use to address the amendments. The only amendments I have are the ones that I think 1, 2, 5 sheets of paper here. Is that what we're working off of?
That's 5.
Okay, 5. Okay, so that being said, do we have any additional amendments beyond what we have on this worksheet?
Well, I just sent an email today and I appreciate all the amendments that were sent in. And I'm asking if we could have just a little bit more time with these.
That could be done. Don't you think we ought to address the ones we have in front of us?
Oh, these first? I would like a little more time with these. If that's okay. with
Okay,
everybody else.
so I'm looking for debate
I don't have an issue with that. I'd like some extra time as well. One of the things I hope to get in this year, we're not gonna be able to get in this year. Hopefully we can do in January. I would like some additional time to discuss some of these. I wouldn't object to a special meeting solely for this purpose, like say next Tuesday. I don't mind discussing some of them tonight, but I don't want to vote on the final budget tonight. I know that we still have time. So I don't know if Tuesday works for everybody else. And, if we're not, if this room's not available, we'd have to try to find an alternate location for it.
Okay, well, we have folks here, we have department heads here and others. I think it would be best to use their time to, the folks came as expecting there was going to be a discussion on the budget to go through them. If you don't want to pick out some, you want to pick out one or another, and you don't want to vote on it, that's certainly not my choice, but if that's the will of the board, then that's the will of the board. So how about if I do this? I'll run through the items, and if there's any items you would like to discuss, we'll discuss them. If the board doesn't want to, we'll go from there. Okay, using the worksheet just so we have something to go by. Number one was not put together by a counselor, so any comment on number one?
We're going to read these so the folks know what we're talking about.
I don't know if Tracy can put them on the screen or not. I can read them if, okay, I'll read them off just for information. It was an item for the senior center to, and the notation was to increase the budget amount. And it says math, air, and computing salaries for an adjustment for A. Ryan to 2.5%. And the amount is $1,878. All right, no comments. Second item, Parks and Rec.
So do you want to know if we want to vote on them?
No.
We're not going to vote on any of them?
I haven't heard anybody say they're ready. I'm ready to vote on them, but evidently we don't have we don't
Me
have,
too, Supervisor.
we don't have folks who want to vote on the budget. So-
I mean, I'm prepared to vote on some of them, just not all of them, So
I have a question. Some of these adjustments, obviously, I wanted to speak with the department heads in regards to these, just to make sure that we're not slashing their budget without them knowing about it. That's my question on it, because I received these and I haven't had an opportunity to speak to any of them, because I just got this thing yesterday.
Judy, that was what I was, sorry, making you turn your head, I apologize, but that's kind of the idea that I had to begin with. So I got yours and I got Nancy's, looked at them a little bit, but I wasn't able to discuss it with anybody at this point. So
Exactly.
that was, yeah.
So I don't think that I'm not in a position to vote on any of them till I discuss them.
Okay, so that being said, we need to have, evidently it's not the will of the body here to discuss these at this point. So that being said, we need 2 town councilors to call for a special town board meeting.
I will call for a special town board meeting.
Okay, we need 2.
I also call for one.
Okay, so that being said, the clerk will please prepare a document so you can sign it because it needs to be in writing.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, and so that being said, in full disclosure, the clerk will have these worksheets available. Okay, I'm not gonna have the public come here and then where you walk away with nothing. Okay, so Tracy, please raise your hand so everybody knows where you're at. Please be understanding with her because they're legal size documents and she has no idea how many of you are gonna come to her and ask for a copy of the documents. I'm not sure that you have heard it, but the governor passed a law recently where we're supposed to be having documents available. The effective date isn't quite here now. Actually, it's a few days from now, but in the spirit of that legislation and to the public, I'm volunteering that. Okay. Obviously, you're going to stress out Tracy a little bit here this evening, so please be understanding with her on that. Okay, the second item is, I'm going to ask your understanding is, because we have a number of items here for potential items, I'm going to ask you politely again to help the clerk and the comptroller to please, if you have thoughts, ideas, to get them to her, because as many of you know, we have the A fund, B fund, and the DB, the highway. She will have to compute all those amendments and to make sure we get in the proper fund. Okay, because we still do have the tax cap we have to deal with. So that being said, we'll be moving on to the next item on the agenda. Discussion. I'm going to please ask the public to remember that brush season, our contract is going to be ending soon. Please don't get caught and have your brush out to the road and miss it by a day. Please go to the town website and make sure that you're up to date on the proper dates for the brush pickup.
For the record, what is the last week of brush collection?
Depends on which side, east or west.
Okay, well, what's the last, do you have the last
I-
date for each?
My memory, and please don't count on my memory, it's the 15th. 15th, I think, is 1 week, and the clerk can correct me on if I. And the 22nd on one side and 15th on the first. I'm sorry, could you put your mask down? Yell, please. Second. Say again, please, I can't hear.
The east side's the 15th and the west side's the 22nd.
15th and 22nd, okay.
Mr. Supervisor, do we need
I can't hear,
to,
somebody's talking, I don't know who's talking.
it's me.
Oh, yeah.
Do we need to close that public hearing about the budget and hold it open for the next
The
meeting?
public
or-
hearing on the budget was already
It's
coming on.
closed, yeah.
We did all that?
Last, like our last
Yep, we
meeting.
did that, come and go.
Oh, cool.
Okay, tomorrow's Veterans Day. To all the veterans in the community, please, from all the board members, we appreciate your service and dedication to the country. Everybody doesn't raise their hand and write a blank check for the United States of America, a never-ending blank check. So again, for all those who've served, thank you, and to all the military families. Further item from the board.
Yeah, this past weekend, Parks and Rec did an awesome program, the Ghost Walk. When they do it again, you should all go. You get to learn a lot about history of individuals that lived in the town of Cicero. It was enjoyable. And then, so hats off to everybody that participated in that, minus me. And then I did some drainage work over the weekend, just looking at it with John. John went out we went out to look at drainage issues over at Hiller Heights, so we took a look at that. As well as I looked at some drainage issues over on, I always pronounce it wrong, I live right by it, but Heedy Lane. So they have some drainage stuff there. We'll talk about it during the drainage committee when it comes back up. That's all I have.
I'd also throw out that Supervisor-elect Aragano joined us. He's trying to hit the ground running, getting ahead on some of these drainage issues.
Thank you. Further comments, Nancy?
When will we know when our next budget meeting is going to be?
I
Great,
will-
great question.
I will,
Great
I will
question.
bring that up and see.
What is
when we-
your availability, everybody? Because I don't want to,
I get out of work at 4:30.
oh, it will not be before that.
That's what we're going to be doing and seeing when the department heads and depending on how many questions and how many more amendments come in, then we'll have to go from there. Okay, next item on the agenda is number 11, public input. Bill and Abe, please, name and address.
Hi, Joyce Philnave, Ontario Ave. Thanks. I just thought maybe to make it even easier on Tracy, if the board would allow her to email the documents out to people, we could just give our email address and she can put them together and email them out.
I'm going to defer to the clerk on that.
I'll get it
Miss-
to you in a PDF.
Ms. Cosman, would it be easier to just post them on the website?
I would be happy to do either, whatever's more convenient.
I think that'd probably be easier than
We can-
email for
Well,
everybody.
we're going to probably have some who want to pick them up, some who want one way or another, so
We should have
I'm going
copies.
to leave
Yeah.
that to
We
the
can
clerk to
accommodate
figure that
anyway.
out based on the individual's
Do both.
wishes, if that's okay. Okay, that being said, Number 12, I'm going to move to adjourn. Need a second
Second,
and a voice vote. All in favor?
aye.
Aye. Okay, we're adjourned.